Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Anne. And we will continue with the discussions. We do think that this afternoon is meant for exchange of experiences, and we will learn how people work in different cities. We also have online participants of the discussion, and we have to thank our partner, La Telecom, for this opportunity. I would like to ask Ivar Rosenberger, coordinator of the program Riga 2014, to open the discussion. Thank you. Good afternoon. First, I would like to apologize for my voice, which has been affected by the chill of Latvian autumn. And please excuse me if I burst out in tears because I see such a numerous audience. I really have to thank you for this and for being here. You will probably want to know why we have 58 cities in the title of our forum. It's a good question indeed, and since we are in a higher learning institution, I would like to start with a test. Maybe someone can answer this question. How many vertebrae do we have? Does anyone know the answer? This is not the right university, it's not a medical university, but still, you should probably think about this because we don't have 58 vertebrae. No, the number is not 58, but I would like to draw a comparison. If we compare the human body to the body of a city, then I would like to say that culture forms the deep muscles which hold our spinal cord together. All the inhabitants, all the city dwellers make these muscles, and in Riga we have 58 such vertebrae or neighborhoods. Tonight we will hear about a few of them, but it is an equally great pleasure for us to hear the stories of other cities and to learn what they think about this topic. I would like to introduce the first speaker, and before that, to remind you all that all of you who are present in this auditorium is welcome to participate in the discussion. After each speaker, we will have a brief question and answer question. Please raise your hand after each presentation, and we will try to make a dialogue. I will also remind the speakers to stick to the 10 minutes allocated in the program, otherwise I will start showing them different signs. The first speaker is from Liverpool, and this city was known by a huge spider which was walking along the streets in the year when Liverpool was the culture capital. I'm not sure if the spider walked all the streets of the city and met all the citizens, but I'm sure that Neil will be able to tell you more about this. Neil, you're welcome. The floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Neil Peterson from Liverpool 2008. It's great to be here in this neighbourhood of Riga. It's my second time in Riga, but I got to know this neighbourhood very well today because the taxi driver got terribly lost in the roadworks, and so I've managed to have got to know this neighbourhood really, really well, and it's fantastic. Actually, it's really good to be here because I'm picking up on some of the themes that Anne mentioned in her talk. In particular, I think being involved in Liverpool's capital of culture saved me from a life of drugs and petty crime, I think. So, anyway, I just want to, I'll stick to the 10 minutes, but I want to really quickly run through how Liverpool connected with its communities in various ways through the European Capital of Culture programme and give some very specific examples, hopefully illustrating some of the points that Anne made. So very quickly, I want to talk about the programme as a catalyst for a lot of community activity, particularly connecting community with the rest of the city's agenda, using city spaces to create a real sense of place, both in the city centre and in the neighbourhoods. Programs that connect with people, like volunteers and community champions, and maybe just finish with some issues and lessons which will lead us on to some discussions, we hope. First of all, just some of the programme, really, and I think it's really important to understand, I mean, Anne's point again about audience development. The European Capital of Culture is a fantastic way to connect lots of people who are very culturally aware, but more importantly, people who don't usually connect with cultural programmes. And in Liverpool, that was a very strong theme that we had, because the way that the city got behind our bid made, we think, the difference in our judges selecting Liverpool to be the European Capital of Culture from the UK. And so we wanted to, make a lot of the events free for the public. 75% of them were free, and there were major events like the big spider that walked around the street, which kind of were pieces of street theatre that engaged lots of people. The use of the streets itself, really important. And we also established some local pavilions where we took very important cultural programming very deep into the hearts of our communities, including some of the most challenged areas of Liverpool. And that also led on to some what we call cultural trails, which I'm going to give you one example of, and public art, which again is a great way to connect, or make a sense of space. And also in the south of the city, the area right next to the city where the cathedrals are, the delivery of events in that part of the city has completely transformed it. And one of the things that has happened since European Capital of Culture is we've now moved into the north of the city, which is the biggest challenge for Liverpool. It's a white working class area with real problems around deprivation and poor housing and poor health. It's where the football grounds are, and we've started to take some of our major events out into that area to create the same effect that we've got in South Liverpool. So very quickly moving on. This is one of the programs that we had. It's become quite well known. It's a trail of what we call Superland bananas. The original one of these is a piece of street art in Liverpool. But it's like a cow parade. And in terms of participative art, local community groups, schools, businesses supported artists to make these. And we had around 100 of them, or 120, which created a trail across the city. And two things happened. A, the communities got very much involved in the participatory process of building them. And secondly, it was a huge economic and community connector, because kids would go and climb on them and take lots of photographs. And it really just kind of it spread that participation of our program right across the city. And that trail of culture, as well as particular spaces, was particularly important to us, I think. But the other thing I wanted to really talk about in a bit more detail is a program that we developed called Creative Communities. And that was the very specific program that we developed to take culture out into neighbourhoods, but also to connect culture to wider city agendas. What we did, basically, was said to the people in the police, into the city council, the health department, and so on, think about what your agendas are, and think about how culture and the capital of culture can make a difference to those agendas, really, and think very creatively about how that might happen. I'm going to give you some examples of those. The second thing as well as that kind of city agenda, is also getting the cultural organisations, which tend to be city centre based, out there into the communities as well, and there's ways that we've done that. So as well as city agendas, it's getting the major cultural institutions out of their comfort zone, if you like, and out into the neighbourhoods. And then also the third area is creating a better neighbourhood narrative, involving local people in telling stories and getting involved in cultural activity that tells a much more positive story about the neighbourhood and brings that sort of connectivity. And finally, the point that Anne made about participation and audience development, encouraging community audiences to go into the city centre and to see programming. Just a few examples. Band on the Runway, that's a new idea that we've got for a young band program travelling around Europe. But basically, the original concept of this was very simple. In each one of the districts of Liverpool and in some of the surrounding areas, a young music battle of the bands took place, and the finals would take place in the district centre, and then the winners would come and play at major festivals in the European Capital of Culture year. And indeed, they went on in an international programme with other cities. Very simple, young music in the community, and then building on that to get national and international exposure. Some further examples. Four Corners was the very specific programme. I know Ivor's very keen that we should talk about that, where each one of the 5 districts that we had in Liverpool was partnered with a cultural institution. one of the major cultural institutions, and did a community program based in the community which looked at issues that were central to that neighbourhood. It's Not Okay, I'm going to come on to that. That's about violence and antisocial behaviour. In Harmony, that's a music program. And we also animated our parks, which is, again, a very important part of the city. I know Riga's got some fantastic parks, using those as a venue to take culture in your capital of culture year out too. So Art Valley is one of the Four Corners examples. And basically, it's a collaboration in a program of Liverpool, which is actually called ALT, as in the River Alt, which is a small river that runs through it. And it's got a history of gang issues. Two gangs are causing a lot of problems with gun crime and big dispute between two gangs of really young kids, really, but it's causing a major problem in the area. And the LARC partners, they're the major cultural institutions of the city. Their focus with this program is on disaffected young men who may get sucked into gang activity. And they've developed a centre called The Pad in that area. And as part of that program, they do theatre workshops with those young men. They get tickets to theatre productions in the city centre because the program's principally led by the major theatre group in the city. But what's interesting is that it's the funding for that programme comes from the Arts Council, which is the funding body for arts in the UK. But the bid for that funding was actually led by Cobalt Housing, which is the housing association which delivers a lot of the local housing in the area. So a real collaboration around a particular issue in that city, led by the housing department. In Harmony is also, in another part of the city in North Liverpool, which was inspired by the Venezuelan program El Sistema, and it's the Liverpool's Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, and they are now in the fourth year of a program, and it's about music and how it transforms lives. That's a partnership with a school in West Everton, a very challenged part of the city, and each child gets 4 hours of music a week, plus after school and involvement of their parents and so on. And nearly 200 people have been involved in that program. And it's made a massive difference both to educational attainment and to the way that community feels. And again, very, very successful connection between the Philharmonic Orchestra and a very tough area of the city. And It's Not Okay is our anti-violence program, which we've worked with around young people. And it uses very strong film looking at issues around drinking, gun and gang crime, antisocial behaviour. Those DVDs or plays are seen in schools, and then there are workshops and follow-ups, and software enables that project to be corrected or connected to the national curriculum. And again, two things have happened. Views about crime and antisocial behaviour have changed dramatically in the teenagers affected. And also, educational attainment's gone up. So again, using film to tackle these areas, and it started in European Capital of Culture. I think last week the programme received a European award, and we're interested in developing a European bid to develop this if there are any partner cities interested. Also, we wanted to talk about people programmes. So our volunteer programme, I'll go quickly through this, involved 1,000 local people volunteering, and we've continued since 2008. So they're the volunteers getting the uniforms in 2008, around a couple of hundred there. Again, a lot of older people there. People talk about connecting older people who maybe have lost their partners or not working anymore. Real passion for the city, getting involved in volunteering. And we've developed a partnership with the main retail district in Liverpool, and the volunteers continue, and they're called City Stars now, and 4 years on, they're still providing a sort of welcome and support at events. Some current approaches. I'm going to go quickly through this because we're nearly out of time. But the funding model that we've got in Liverpool for culture post-2008 focuses on three strands: the major cultural institutions, the medium-sized festivals and organisations that take a lot of programming out into the neighbourhoods, and also a small grassroots programme that enables local cultural organisations to bid for funding. And also I mentioned North Liverpool, which is the biggest challenge. And a lot of the regeneration initiatives that we take part in the city have a very strong cultural element because it does make a real difference to the sense of place that you have. So just an example, the successor to the Big Spider that we had in 2008, which was a piece of street theatre by the French company La Machine, was this April when we took the Titanic project. It was 100 years since the Titanic sailed in its maiden voyage, and there was some strong Liverpool connections. And we had Royal Deluxe from Nantes came to Liverpool. About 500,000 people saw this event, but we actually took the programme, there it is in the city centre, we actually took it out into North Liverpool, and you could see some of the poor housing there, and some of the local people, just the wonderment at seeing this event come to the neighbourhood. That's the football ground, Liverpool football ground, and there's the little girl giant walking through there. Again, really huge audience. And the feeling that local people had by taking that major event to the city was amazing, really. And a few just issues and lessons before I finished. First of all, think really creatively in terms of your city agenda and how you can use cultural connections to tackle some of those community issues. If you invest in communities and invest in local people, say through volunteer programs and so on, it's really appreciated. The other thing is it grows your audience because people who get involved in volunteering at local level also learn much more about what's going on in the city centre, so they get involved in there. And also when you tap into those people, they've got great passion for your city, and that's really, really important. I think it's really important also that flexible and generous partnerships between organisations are crucial. It's not just about money and funding. But the big issue, I think, or two big issues. One, it's quite difficult sometimes to communicate about local programs and get the message out. We're very good at communicating about our big major events and so on, but it's quite hard to get local. And the other thing is about the production values, really, because when you take a really big event like the Titanic event to local audiences, they really come out in time. But sometimes if the production values are poor, then local people don't get very interested or it's not very exciting. Don't just chase the funding, but really I think the two things I would finish off by saying is get it right, and there's huge potential to both build community cohesion but also to grow audience participation, and it unlocks that pride and passion. And just to show you what I mean, this is the last day of that big event that we took place in Liverpool, and there we are 4 years after European Capital of Culture with over 200 volunteers supporting that event. So there's a real legacy as well to your Community Capital of Culture programme. So that's it from me. Hope that was a very quick and useful run through of some of Liverpool's programmes. Thank you.
Paldies. Vai mums ir...
Thank you very much. Now, do we have any questions, please? There's just one. There is one question.